Somewhere in a factory in eastern China right now, a machine is grinding a lens. In 20 minutes, that lens gets boxed with a frame and sold online for $6. A few miles away, an almost identical lens is heading somewhere very different, into a designer frame, headed for a mall in Ohio with a $250 price tag. Same optical quality, same coatings. Sometimes even the same production run. The only real difference is what happens after the lens leaves the factory. And what happens after is the story of one of the strangest monopolies in the modern economy. A company most people have never heard of, run by a man who started with nothing, that ended up owning nearly every step between a piece of glass and your face. Its name is EssilorLuxottica. It's worth about $165 billion. And for nearly 60 years, it has had enormous influence over what billions of people pay for something they medically need. This is the story of how that happened, and why a mid-sized manufacturing city in China, one you've almost certainly never heard of, might be the only thing that's ever cracked it open. A kid with nothing but hands. The man behind this empire wasn't born into money. He wasn't even born into a family that could keep him. Leonardo Del Vecchio came into the world in Milan in 1935. His father died before he was old enough to remember him, and his mother, raising several children alone in a country still rebuilding after war, couldn't feed them all. She gave him up to an orphanage. Nobody came looking for him. What he had instead was a set of hands that worked faster and more precisely than anyone else's. At 14, an apprenticeship put him in front of a die stamping machine, shaping small metal parts for hours on end. Work most teenagers despise. Del Vecchio treated it like a puzzle, and got good enough that by his mid-20s, he understood something most trained economists never grasp. Control the smallest, most overlooked part of a supply chain, and you can eventually leverage it into owning the whole thing. At 26, in 1961, he set up a small workshop in the mountain town of Agordo, making hinges and nose pads, the invisible hardware that every eyewear brand needed, but none of them wanted to manufacture themselves. He sold those parts at a markup nobody questioned, because nobody else was making them. That markup became his seed capital. Buying the whole chain. Within a decade, Del Vecchio wasn't just making parts. He was making complete frames, then launching his own brand, Luxottica, then buying rival brands outright. By 1990, he'd taken the company public in New York, tapping the deepest capital markets on Earth to fund an acquisition spree that would define the next 30 years. 3 deals in particular built the cage. The first came in 1995, when Luxottica took over a shoe corporation 5 times its own size. Not for the shoes, but for a chain of retail stores buried inside it called LensCrafters. Overnight, Luxottica didn't just make eyewear, it controlled where Americans bought it. The second came in 1999, when Del Vecchio bought Ray-Ban for $640 million. At the time, Wayfarers were a $30 impulse buy sold in gas stations. He pulled them off those shelves, repositioned them as premium fashion, and placed them exclusively in his own stores. Within a few years, the exact same frame, same lens, same hinge, same everything, was selling for over $150. It's over $200 today. The third deal is the one that shows how the whole system really worked. In the early 2000s, Oakley was thriving, independent, and selling extremely well through Luxottica-owned stores. When the two companies clashed over pricing, Luxottica simply pulled every Oakley product from its shelves. Oakley's stock cratered by roughly half within weeks, not because the product got worse, but because the company that controlled the shelf space decided to empty it. 2 years later, with the stock still depressed, Luxottica bought Oakley for $2.1 billion, a fraction of what it had been worth before the standoff. No other brand ever challenged Luxottica on price again. Renting out other people's names. With rivals neutralized, the company found an even more efficient way to extract money: licensing. Fashion houses like Prada, Chanel, Armani, and Burberry didn't want to design or manufacture eyewear, so they rented out their names instead. Luxottica designed the frames, built them in its own factories, and sold them in its own stores, while the fashion house collected a royalty check for lending a logo. Walk into any store and you'll find a designer frame sitting a few feet from an unbranded one off the exact same line, priced 3 or 4 times higher for the name alone. Then, in 2018, the final piece slotted into place. Luxottica merged with Essilor, the world's largest lens manufacturer, forming Essilor-Luxottica, a single company that now owned the frames, the lenses, the factories, the brands, and the stores. Buried inside that merger was one more asset almost nobody talks about: EyeMed Vision Care, the second largest vision insurance provider in the United States, covering 43 million people. Think about what that actually means. Your insurance tells you it covers frames up to a certain amount. The insurer paying that claim is EyeMed. The store is LensCrafters. The manufacturer is Essilor-Luxottica. 3 different names on 3 different receipts. One company behind all of them. And at no point does a competitive market ever enter the transaction. If a single automaker owned every dealership and ran the country's second largest car insurer, regulators would be circling. In eyewear, it just became the default. Delvecchio died in 2022 at 87 as the second richest man in Italy. The system he built kept running exactly as designed. The city that makes half the world's lenses. None of this would be vulnerable at all if not for Danyang, a city in Jiangsu province about 2 hours from Shanghai, with a population under 1 million and a name that means nothing to most of the world. Danyang makes over 400 million spectacle lenses every year. That's roughly half of every corrective lens produced on the planet, from one city. Add in over 100 million frames annually, more than 1,600 companies, and around 50,000 workers, and you have an industrial cluster that quietly outproduces most entire countries. It started small. Lens technicians relocated from Shanghai in the 1960s taught locals to grind and polish glass by hand. Decades of reinvestment followed: government-backed industrial parks, university research partnerships, and in 2014, a local firm built China's first domestic lens coating machine, ending a foreign monopoly on that equipment. Today, Danyang factories apply the same multi-layer coatings, blue light filtering, and UV protection that premium brands market as luxury features. And independent testing has repeatedly found the lenses match or outperform products sold at 10 to 20 times the price. Where the wall cracked. 2 companies figured out what that meant before anyone else. Zenni Optical, founded in 2003, cut out every layer Luxottica had spent decades building. No stores, no licensing fees, no markup, and started selling complete prescription glasses online, starting under $7. It's since sold more than 50 million pairs. Warby Parker took a slightly different route. Its founders got quoted $700 to replace a lost pair of glasses and realized their smartphone, vastly more complex, cost less. They launched in 2010 at $95 a pair and went public in 2021 at a valuation over $6 billion. Online eyewear sales have grown at double-digit rates for 5 straight years running. In the US, the share of prescription glasses bought online climbed from under 3% in 2015 to over 15% by 2025, and it's even higher among younger buyers. Essilor-Luxottica isn't going anywhere. It pulled in more than 28 billion euros in 2024 and still dominates the industry by a wide margin. But every disruption like this follows the same arc. It starts small, gets dismissed as a niche, and never stays contained. 4.4 billion people need corrective lenses. For 60 years, most of them paid whatever one company decided to charge, without ever knowing a single name was hiding behind the brand, the store, and the insurance card. That's what made the whole thing work for so long. Not that the price was hidden, but that the ownership was. Now, a manufacturing city most people can't find on a map is forcing a question that never used to get asked out loud. Why does this actually cost what it costs? And once you've heard the answer, it's hard to walk past the display case again without seeing it. If this changed how you look at the glasses on your face right now, hit subscribe. This channel finds one of these hidden monopolies every week. And tell me in the comments, now that you know one company owns the brand, the store, and the insurance behind your last pair, does it change what you'll buy next?